Yes, today was a very interesting day in the news. Today, we had just found out that the West Memphis Three have finally earned their freedom after over almost 20 years in jail. For those who don't remember the West Memphis Three, these were the boys that were Damian Echoes, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly. They were accused of killing three 8-year-old Cub Scouts and dumping their bodies in an Arkansas ditch. And believe me, if you've seen the movie Paradise Lost, it's a very, very graphic story, but it also exposes the injustice that happened to the West Memphis Three. Now, apparently, what has happened today is that under a plea bargain deal, Damien and Jesse and Jason were being freed immediately. The boys' families were notified about the pack ahead of time, and not afterwards. They had to basically enter an Alford guilty plea. It's sort of like saying, basically, in layman's terms, it's basically making the prosecution say, you know what, admit that you're guilty. If you admit that you're guilty, you walk out of jail. That's basically what it is. Well, if you admit that, why would you have to admit that you're guilty? If you thought they were guilty, you wouldn't be releasing them. Kind of stupid, what that whole plea deal was. But you know something, the judge finally released them, and they said that you're after going on 20 years. The three boys were released, and they still maintain their innocence, that they did not hurt these children and they did not kill them. They did not dump them in a ditch. They had a lot of celebrity help. I mean, I heard that Johnny Depp was behind them, and Winona Ryder, and you had a lot of like Eddie Vedder was behind this also. There was a lot of like support for it. I mean, because you know why there was a lot of support for these young boys, because after Paradise Lost, thank God for documentary films. I always say that when you watch a documentary film, if it's a film that really catches people's interest, thank the documentary for exposing the injustice that was happening to these boys, and basically got attention and created awareness. And that's a great thing about what this documentary did, because this documentary came on HBO. It was as hardcore as it came, and what I mean by hardcore is they show the dead bodies, they show what happened to these children, but they also show two sides. They also show the prosecution and the defense side, and it led it up to you to decide, okay, well, do you believe that in their innocence or not? The film more focused on the injustice that was happening, because apparently this overzealous prosecutor went after these three boys and basically thought, you know something, you guys basically did it because you were into gothic stuff, you were into animal mutilations, you fit the type of pattern that happened to these individuals. So after 20 years, these three boys are finally free. Now, I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on this, and a lot of people say, hey, look, you know something? Justice was not served. Hey, you know something? I understand that, because sometimes, when we have a problem with our justice system, a lot of people believe that these boys are guilty, and they should have been in life imprisonment or in death row. But to be honest with you, like I've always said, if you have no murder weapon and they got no confession and you have no witnesses, you know, how are you going to prosecute? You can't just throw people in jail because they look like they did it. And that was a whole witch hunt behind the West Memphis Three. And you know something? To the boys, I hope that, well, I should say men now, because they're not boys no more. They're like actual adults. You know, I hope you all come out of jail, and I hope that there's no anger. Don't try to be angry about what happened. Try to go out and be positive into the community. Get involved with legal action. Get involved in education. Tell people about how the justice system works, and tell them how to stay out of jail, because that's mostly important. And now, if you do ever end up in jail, you know the law, you know how to maintain your innocence, and don't try to create a bigger problem than what it is. Because you know something, I'm sure these boys have thought about suicide, and I know they had depression and they had to deal with prison inmates. Because I heard like Damien Echoes got raped in jail, and there's a lot of like, when I saw him today, Damien Echoes basically, he's disturbed, but I can understand why he's disturbed, because this man has been put in jail in solitary confinement for 20 years. So, all I'm trying to say is I hope that the three boys come out of jail with a positive outlook. I know that's crazy to say, and I know that it's fucked up to say that, but I just hope you come out and say, hey, look, you know what? You know, I'm free, thank God. I'm free to see my family after almost nearly 2 decades in prison. I can finally hug my wife, and I can finally hug my family, my loved ones who supported me, and my supporters who loved and helped us. I just say one thing, and it's very important. Just go back into society, just basically trying to change the problems by getting involved. Because if you're not getting involved, you have nothing to complain about. And you boys can set a perfect example by going into schools and educating them about the justice system, and educating them about the law, and educating them about your experience. How it's easy to be accused of a crime that you didn't commit. How to maintain your innocence, how to make sure that you stay on top of your case, how to make sure that, you don't give up. So, I will say this, there are no winners in this case. Damien Echoes, Jesse Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly, you all basically got your freedom, but you still have over your head that you are the killers. And to the victims' families, my heart goes out to you as well, because your three boys who lost their lives at very young ages are all dead. It just seems like lately when you watch TV, children are the number one target. And my biggest fear, and I always said this, is guard your children. Tell them you love them. Tell them you make sure that when you're with them that you are not going to be, you're not going to let anything happen to them. I know that you can't guard your children left and right 24/7, but still go into this thinking, let your children know that you love them, and that you're there to protect them and educate them about the world out there. Because like Damien Echoes and his two friends, they were just out one day, and sure enough, they got picked up because of a crazy witch hunt, because children were being killed. It just seems like lately when you look at the news, I think of Libby Kukunski, and I think about his tragedy, and I say to myself, what the hell's going on with this world here? I think of Libby, and I say to myself, these three boys are still dead. And yeah, something, that maybe we'll never know what happened to these three Cub Scouts who were killed, but still, we still need justice. And something, if the prosecution believes that these boys have done it, then something, I guess, that's just the answer that the world will have to accept. The boys are saying that they didn't do it, that they basically were accused of a crime they didn't commit. So, something, it's really up to you whether you believe that in their innocence or not. I always say that, you are innocent until proven guilty. That's the way I always look at things. But as a parent too, you also have to say to yourself, it's not about right and wrong. It's all about trying to find justice for your children. That's the problem that I think as parents, we're so angry that sometimes, we do have to rely on the justice system working. But at the same time, believe me, I can understand if that was one of my children who were killed, I wouldn't care about their innocence or guilt. I would just care about if these boys did it, then they need to punish for what they did. But something, we have to actually rely on the justice system to see if it works. Now I know a lot of people say that, it doesn't seem to be working because, Kaylee, she died and there was no justice. Then we find out that Libby's killer might go free because he's pleading insanity. Then we look at Damien Echoes and he's freed on charges of killing children. It just seems like children don't seem to be getting justice lately. But I also say again, something, I understand that when children are killed, we always think of the crime itself. We also got to look at the evidence that's presented too. If the evidence does not show, I always say, if you're going to get somebody, get them the right way. That's all. That's all I'm trying to say. I understand that emotional impacts can get to you, because when it comes to a death of a child, it's the worst thing that we want to think of. But at the same time, I always say this: don't let your guard down. Always keep an eye on your children. Always make sure that wherever your children are involved in, follow your children. Be involved. Just tell yourself at the end of the day that, something, in this particular case, there are no winners here. So at the end of the day, I know a lot of people, will have mixed feelings about this, but I still say again that the justice system does work. Just give it some time. Hopefully one day we will find out who hurt these children. If these men, I should say, excuse me, 'cause I keep calling them boys, if Damien, Jesse, and Jason are the killers, then that's their soul and their conscience that they have to work with. If they are innocent and they never did this crime, then it's the justice system that fucked up. But regardless of what the case is, there are no winners here. So there was justice today, and justice did work for the 3 West Memphis boys. But at the same time, both sides lost everything. Victims lost their beautiful children who went to Cub Scouting, and Damien, Jesse, and Jason lost their adult lives trying to fight for freedom. So all of you have a great weekend. I hope that, tell your children you love them, but for the most part, take care of yourself. Remember, use your mind. It's your greatest weapon.